Whoever you are, whatever your theological, spiritual, political, sexual, or racial orientation, or gender identity, welcome to worship with us today. Are there any announcements this morning?
I have about 1 million announcements, so bear with me. First of all, I want to thank everybody who came out and helped last night for the coffee house, and everybody who came and enjoyed the coffee house. It was really nice to be able to do that event again, and hopefully we'll do another one soon. I want to remind everybody, next week is next week Easter.
Next week.
The kids are going to be doing their canned food Easter egg hunt. So we have a few donations already brought in, but if you can bring in some non-perishable items, when we're done with it, it'll all go to the food pantry. Aaron also has a box of Easter eggs out in the fall. If you want to take some Easter eggs home and decorate them and bring them back next week and finish up our Easter tree. That would be a nice addition to what we have already. I had another one and I can't remember what it was. So if I think of it, I will let you know.
Form.
Oh yes, the pledge form. Thank you. I'm looking at it. Lauren wasn't here today, so she asked me to tell everybody we're starting to collect pledges for next year. I think Prudential is going to meet on May 1st to plan out our budget. So we would like to have the pledge forms back by the end of April. There's a copy in your order of service. There's also some extras out in the copy. Thank you.
Any other announcements? Aaron?
Just a reminder that we're selling the raffle calendar fundraiser. So if you want a calendar or if you want to take some to coworkers or anything, $5 each. We'll be selling on the
just as a reminder that community yard sale will be the Saturday after Easter. So we'll be for people to donate items if they want, and people to bake for our bake table. And it starts at 9, there's still tables available, so see everyone myself. Oh, and there's also, I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
there's also gonna be a collection at the yard sale for the food pantry, so if anybody wants to bring in a non-perishable item, you can do that.
Any other announcements? All right, then I will introduce our guest minister today, Ken Reeves. He's here to talk about that famous quote that I think we've been thinking about a lot for the past couple of months, maybe past couple of years, that the moral arc of the universe is long, but bends inevitably towards justice. And I probably just butchered that.
Good morning. Morning. May peace be in your hearts. Through the energy of freedom and the warmth of love, may you live the fullness of being alive, and in that fullness find peace, justice, and understanding. May humanity be at peace, and may all of life on earth live together in balance and peace. Good to be with you all this morning. I visited here some months ago, and thank Rick for inviting me back. It's good to be back with you all. We are a Unitarian Universalist congregation, which to me means that we are a support community for people on various journeys towards ultimate goals, such as love, or peace, or union. One of the ways we support each other is by getting up out of the weeds of our lives and viewing the world as if from 10,000 feet, where we can see where we have come, where we are, where we're going. For example, I appreciate our forebear Theodore Parker, the source of my reading that Rick referred to today, for interpreting life not just from the level of 10,000 feet, from the perspective of the universe. Today's sermon aspires to join the UU tradition of looking at matters from that 10,000-foot vantage. When I first conceived of it, I thought assumptions were going to be the hero of the story. And so I gave the sermon the title, The New Assumptions. But as the sermon unfolded, the universe has turned out to be the hero. Assumptions are more like its sidekick. Very important, but still sidekick. I could title it, The Universe is Our Hero, and Assumptions Are Its Sidekick. If Hollywood bought the rights to the sermon, they would rename it Butch Universe and the Sundance Assumptions. I hope that today's service supports you as you journey with much of humanity toward a world blessed by peace and justice. That as you journey, you live the full richness of being alive.
Please stand as you are willing and able, the light of the chalice and the affirmation. Please recite with me the words of the order of service. Kindling this flame of our liberal heritage in our chalice of community, let us open to the presence of the sacred. Now the affirmation. Love is the doctrine of this church, the quest for truth its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve humanity in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine. Thus do we covenant with each other and with God. Main stand for our hymn today. ties into today's theme of discussing peace. This is my Psalm 159.
In 1858, when Theodore Parker addressed the Massachusetts Anti-Slavery Convention, things looked grim for the abolition movement. A few months earlier, the Supreme Court had handed down the Dred Scott decision, stating that even though Dred Scott lived in a free state, he was not entitled to freedom. He was an African-American man. He, furthermore, as somebody's property, Scott was not a citizen and could not sue in a federal court. Despite this Supreme Court setback, in his speech, Parker reviewed the ending of slavery in England, France, Germany, even Russia, and concluded with this offer of hope. Look at the facts of the world. You see a continual and progressive triumph of the right. I do not pretend to understand the moral universe. The arc is a long one. My eye reaches but little ways. I cannot calculate the curve and complete the figure by the experience of sight. I can divine it by conscience. From what I see, I am sure it bends towards justice. 5 years later, President Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation. 8 years later, the 13th Amendment abolished slavery.
If it is language that makes us human, one half of language is to listen. Silence can exist without speech, but speech cannot live without silence. Listen to the speech of others. Listen even more to their silence. We now have the opportunity to share our joys and concerns with one another.
Two joys. One is for my brother JP, whose birthday is today. The other is for our friends Chelsea and Spencer, who gave birth to a little girl yesterday afternoon.
I can't, you and Julie fed him about the guys, it's a big job. Thanks.
It was a big job, and we wouldn't be able to do it without everyone putting your help in. Thank you, everyone. Well, like the second candle of joy for the coffee house, the fact that it's back, and we'll let me do many more of these going forward. Thank you for making that much easier than I thought it would be. Candle of joy and concern for Julie's parents, and Maggie is normally all over the place about this time, having her overnight. So we haven't heard anything, so I assume all good things. I would like one more for all the joys and concerns of the whole hearts. The purpose of this church is to encourage all who gather here to grow more generous in spirit and in action. This is the great end of all the world's faith traditions, to bring the human being closer to the divine by acts of creation and compassion. We now take an offering that allows us to exercise that all-important generosity of spirit, an offering that will support the self-supporting church and its many ministries. The gifts of the congregation will be most gratefully received. Please stand as you're willing and able for the dedication of gifts.
Oh, that's me.
administration of the law, but also for today's purposes, meaning also cooperation to meet each other's needs. We're committed to not understanding the moral universe, but in 2022, we understand the universe better than in 1858. Still not sure why the universe bends toward justice, but I have an idea how. I think the universe bends toward justice because the universe supports complexity and cooperation, and because there's something mysteriously spiritual in the universe. The universe's trend toward complexity and cooperation began when gases and dust collected into planets and stars. Atoms joined into increasingly complex molecules. Helping molecules grow are carbon atoms, which are good at bonding with other atoms. Carbon's like the hostess of a party. Everyone knows her, she's fun and bubbly, people gather around, and soon the joint is jumping. Complex carbon molecules in water, sun's energy, and bam, life begins. Living molecules evolve into cells, then bodies, their various organs working together. First, life reproduced by cloning, then by individuals working together, as in, well, sex. Animals went from living solitarily to forming groups. With complexity came cooperation. A body's organs working together, sexual reproduction, living in groups, all require cooperation. The most recent complexity to evolve, human brains, containing 100 trillion neural connections. Our brains might be the most complicated structures in the universe. Evolution gave us big brains, not to handle the simple tasks of hunting and gathering, but to handle the more complicated task of cooperating with each other. We, with our big brains, are more cooperative, say, than our cousins, the apes. Chimpanzees do form groups, but do not work together as a team. So they find a banana plant, everyone grabs what they can, and separates to eat. Humans form teams. Maybe they had to. Maybe apes outforaged the early humans. So one day, someone's 100 trillion neural connections proposed an idea. Those darn monkeys are hogging the fruits and berries. But what if we widen our search, collect what we find, and share? With a collaborative plan like this, the universe bent toward justice. Human cooperation begins at birth. Born dependent, a baby is primed to cooperate with others who will love that baby into maturity. As a cooperative act within an hour of birth, an infant can imitate someone else's facial expression, thereby connecting with that person who responds with the love the baby needs. Through our lifetimes, people need each other. We're in loving relationships, we gain security. Alienated and alone, insecurity. And ethically, meeting people, I want the good for those around me. And I'm a fraction of the universe bending toward justice. The universe also bends toward justice through its mystical moments of union. Maybe on a quiet walk in the woods, you've experienced a moment of oneness with all. Veil lifts, the universe is at one. Then peace. Maybe through its unitary moments, the universe is awakening us out of self-separateness to join the universe's complex unity. Cooperation follows. When mystically united with trees, animals, other people, I realize what happens to them happens to me. So I want the good for them all. Then join the universe bending toward justice. I conceive of the movement toward justice as like a four-tiered upended pyramid. At the top are actions. So like concerned about the harsh edges of society, people act kindly. Supporting the actions from below are policies. Kindness via policies such as drivers should stop for pedestrians at a crosswalk. A few policies support many actions. Supporting policies from below are assumptions. Kind policies are supported by the assumption that we're in this together and we do well to cooperate and collaborate. A few assumptions support many policies, which support many actions. Supporting assumptions is one universe, its complexity and cooperation. The universe's trend toward complexity and cooperation is posed by separateness, an old condition akin to when the universe was composed of random gases and lone atoms. In human circles, the cooperation-separateness polarity shows up in contrasting assumptions. There are separateness assumptions, which I think are older in human history, versus newer cooperative assumptions. These contrasting assumptions occur in, I think, 6 domains. So equality versus inequality, democracy versus autocracy, peace versus war, the health or destruction of nature, facts versus fictions, and love versus hate. Picking up the first, inequality between genders has been justified with the old assumption that men, being sensible and so forth, are needed to run the world. Women were separated from leadership. Racial inequality has been defended by the assumption that non-white people are inferior. This view justified the enslavement of people, which divided black people from white and helped slaveholders get rich. Economic inequality is supported by the assumption that a prosperous economy depends on rich people. Only these job creators know the secret to running the economy. This assumption was likely developed during ancient times when people first began to conduct business. Maybe people were mystified by the complexities of early business and let the new merchant class handle such business and become rich. Any social inequality is supported by the assumption that it is a hierarchical, competitive, survival of the fittest world. And indeed, hierarchies exist in the human and animal worlds, but competing with each other in a hierarchy divides people. In spite of all this, equality is developing. Women are more often leaders of churches, companies, countries. African Americans have not only been freed from slavery, but elevated to the presidency. And now an African American woman is on the Supreme Court, soon to be. Economic inequality is growing from the bottom. Between 1990 and 2015, the world went from 36% of us extremely poor to 10%. Every day for 25 years, a headline could have announced, today, 187,000 people have been lifted from extreme poverty. Social equality is developing. I see that in one of my jobs. I meet with ministerial candidates for psychological evaluations. I conduct psychological evaluations, and I ask them to distill the message of their sermons into one sentence. And most often hear a variation of, God loves us all. In the 19th century, this message of love and universal salvation was preached by a few universalists. Today, this universalist message is, in some circles, universal. It helps that women and people of color have demonstrated competence and honor. It helps that a healthy society needs their involvement. It helps that the people running the 28 million small businesses in America have learned that business acumen is not a secret privy to the rich. It helps that economic equality is healthier for people. Furthermore, competition has given us wars, injustice, dictatorships, and the destruction of nature. Working together offers the healing elixir we need. It also helps that we enjoy a warm feeling each time we cooperate with someone. Then the new assumptions emerge. Women are just as competent as men. There is no difference in character or capacity across the races. The economy depends on all of us earning and spending, and we all can make sound economic decisions. And instead of a competitive hierarchy, we are in this together. Everyone has value, and we survive by cooperating and collaborating. These new assumptions bring us together and bend the world toward justice. The second polarity issue, autocracy versus democracy. Autocracy depends on the assumption that we're not capable of governing ourselves. For much of human history, autocrats have ruled, making autocracy assumed. Autocracy is supported by the additional assumption that we cannot make our lives better. And for centuries, people, powerless in the face of poverty, hunger, illness, just hope for release in heaven. Recently, though, people have made life healthier, less poor, and more pleasant, which encourages us to seek further improvement through democratic governance of the people, by the people, for the people. It helps that we need democracy as the system of government that best supports human prosperity and flourishing. And every time two or more people put their big brains together to solve a problem democratically, new assumptions emerge. We can govern ourselves, and together we can make life better. Their cooperation bends us all toward justice. Or the third issue depends on the assumption that violence is effective at solving problems and at crushing those who are different. Centuries of war leaves it taken for granted. On the side of justice, though, warfare is declining. And even with the war in Ukraine, the chance of dying by violence today is smaller than ever in human history. And the new assumptions. We can solve problems together and be one united human people. The destruction of nature depends on the assumption that people are separate from and superior to, must dominate nature. This old assumption may have begun when ancient humans became an apex species and could harness the earth with agriculture and successfully hunt almost any animal dominance worked. But today, people realize we need nature, we need a healthy nature. In Parker's time, Thoreau and Emerson were rare voices for nature. Now there are millions. It helps that we can realize our need for nature pretty simply, like by holding our breath. In a few seconds, I realize I need the oxygen nature provides. Then the new assumption develops. Humanity is part of nature, depends on nature for life. Regarding fact or fiction, dismissing science and facts has become popular lately. The old assumption here harkens back to when truth was based on dogma, superstition, and the pronouncements of religious and political authorities. During the 19th century, humanity developed science. Science is just the process of verifying a fact. It helps that our big brains let us cooperate not only with each other, but with reality. Facts are further helped by their life-saving effect. Medical facts, for instance, have extended our lifespans. And in all ways, we need facts to make life better. They're like footholds on a mountainside. We plant our foot on a solid fact and stride upward. Then, new assumption develops. We can discern the truth. With that truth, make life better. Finally, there is cruelty in the world. The old assumptions named already contribute to cruelty. Superior and inferior people, and if the inferior suffer, who cares? Violence works, autocracy is effective, and if the autocrat is cruel, too bad. We must dominate nature, and we stick with superstition, dogma, and the pronouncements of authorities, however destructive those ideas may be. Two additional assumptions incite cruelty. One, a collective assumption from our primal history. We trust those in our tribe, outsiders pose a threat. Today, some still ward off imagined persecution by outsiders by persecuting outsiders. And secondly, an individual assumption. Some people who sadly were not given love as children learn to assume they are on their own, and their needs will not be met by other people. To them, cooperating makes no sense. Nevertheless, love is developing. As a psychologist, when I take people's histories, I hear this refrain. My parents spanked me when I was a kid, but I would never do that to my child. This generation of gentle parents raising the next generation of loving people gives me hope. My story applies. When I considered the ministry, I wanted to stand for love. It was one of those underloved children who feared needing others and who made a virtue of unhealthy self-reliance. Still, I hoped there was more love somewhere. I began seminary in Berkeley, California, and sojourned to Phoenix for my hospital chaplaincy. There, I was often the chaplain present as children were wheeled into the ER, followed by families in agony. My chaplaincy ended, and being Mr. Self-Reliant, I set out to bicycle from Phoenix to Berkeley. but I toiled north in unexpected pain. I guess I was hurting after the grief I had witnessed, lonely. In central Arizona, I pulled into a campsite and met the caretakers, Mary and her husband, Bones. Bones showed me around, and we waded in the nearby creek. They asked about me. I revealed my plan to become a minister. They invited me to dine with them at their picnic table and asked me to say grace. As I proceeded north, a Grand Canyon employee let me stay in his trailer at the farm. I borrowed a socket wrench from a Volkswagen driver in Utah. I camped on a porch at a ranch in Nevada. I came to feel not lost and alone, but found by strangers who showed love, healed me, and helped me believe in love. I had hoped there was more love somewhere, and found it, and keep finding it. Learning from experiences like this, I joined many to adopt new loving assumptions. We are connected. When one benefits, all benefit. We are made to cooperate. We can meet each other's needs. We can bend the world toward justice. It's not that hard to create a just, peaceful, healthy world. From negotiation to solar panels, the tools, the actions are available. And adding supportive policies would not be rocket science. When we do not apply these actions and set these policies, old assumptions based on separateness get in the way. These old assumptions are propped up by fear. Assumptions endorsing hierarchies, wars, and lies protect the rich and powerful against the feared loss of wealth and power. Hostility and related assumptions protect against the feared other and against the fear of having one's wish for love be crushed again. Furthermore, old assumptions appear comfortably familiar and are clung to when people are afraid. Hawkers of the old assumptions then gin up fear. But the universe and its complexity, cooperation, and union support the new assumptions. The new assumptions are also backed by evidence and we need them. As the universe is helping humanity embrace these new assumptions, we are on a developmental journey toward complexity and cooperation. And we're also collectively on a spiritual journey toward love. Like all spiritual journeys, ours is a transit from fear to love. That's the essential spiritual journey, fear to love. And so humanity explores, tries divisions, hierarchies, wars, cruelty, but also finds love within and around us, leading us to be the loving species the universe made us to be. Old assumptions persist, unleashing behavior that makes me cringe. Nevertheless, I am a tiny but empowered participant in the universe bending toward justice when I ally with my fellow participants, when I see clearly and critically the old fearful assumptions behind the day's horrors, and when I join with the new assumptions and ride their tidal power. The universe is on their side. Then each wave, each action for the good may seem small. The loving tide drawn by the universe is destined to lift us all.
So I realized we skipped Spirit of Life. I thought this might be a good time attending after today's sermon to sing it together.
You want to stand it or sit?
Up to you. Stand as you're willing and able for the extinguishing of the chalice, followed by our closing benediction. And recite with me the opening words in the order of service. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, or the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. I want to thank all those who shared with today's service, and all of you for sharing this time. For billions of years, the universe is preparing for us to have this collaborative morning together. As we cooperate and collaborate with each other here today,